Hey, generic video essay maker here, and you may have noticed that this video is not a video essay, very contrary to my name. I have actually made a tier list before. I made one for the Umineko arcs. This time I'm going to make one on Frieren. I just finished making a video essay on Frieren, which was about the politics, and I really enjoyed making that, and Frieren is one of my favorite anime, so I'm going to keep making Frieren videos. So yeah, we'll just jump straight into it. I don't have a script with this one, so I'm kind of airballing it. We're just going to talk about which I think are the best arcs and go from there. Beyond Journey's End arc. So this is just the opening arc of the manga. What do I think about this arc? I think that this is amazing. I think that the introduction to Frieren is really, really strong in general. The opening hook is incredible. I love the opening chapter, and I think the anime does a great job of adapting it as well. The way that Frieren's emotional arc is introduced, the foundations are established really quickly. You immediately get a sense of the hero party, despite the fact that you haven't really known any of them yet. You kind of get invested in that relationship with the hero party really quickly. They do a great job of introducing Frieren's conflicts, and the way that the story is going to deal with time and grief is just, it all just throws it at you really quickly, but you're allowed to ingest it in a kind of a careful way. Fern is introduced. I love the way that she's kind of a counterpoint to Frieren's perspective on life. Fern's kind of insistence on speeding up contrasts to Frieren's insistence on slowing down and taking things as they come. I love all of the opening story arcs, really. Everything going up to Stark's introduction. All of these chapters just have a kind of a classic fantasy feel. The way that Flame is introduced is really smooth. The way that Ison works in these chapters is great. Yeah, I mean, the story arc is just, I think in general, Frieren has one of the best openings to a modern fantasy manga that I've read in a long time. And that opening does such a good job of getting you emotionally engaged, down with the themes. It's just great. So I don't think there's any reason why Beyond Journey's End should not be an S-tier Frieren story arc. And we need to think of some funny names for these tiers, don't we? I'll probably have to improvise them as I'm going along. Okay, we'll just call it S for the moment.
Whatever, dude!
Hour of the Guillotine. Very iconic arc, probably the most memed moment in all of Frieren. Frieren going to Hour and saying, "Kill yourself!" This moment was probably one of the first times that I realized that Frieren anime was going to be massive. I read the manga first, I got suggested it by a friend, so I was already quite familiar with the material, and it was already fast on the way to becoming one of my favorites before the anime came out. And it was actually one of the first times that I remember talking with people in person about an anime, because where I'm from the UK, anime is still viewed in a kind of like a, what is that? It's still viewed as a kind of a weird thing. And when I was going through school, anime was something that you would get bullied for. So the experience of just talking to people just kind of at my job, just being able to talk about an anime, which was the case with Frieren. Like, it was so popular that random people that I would not expect to watch anime were watching it. And Hour of the Guillotine, this arc kind of embodied that explosion of popularity. Really became something that you could discuss with just a layperson, which was really cool. I'll put this in A for the moment. I think that the fights are great. You can see what's going to happen with Frieren corrupting the scales. You can see it coming, but the way they deliver it is just so effective. The flashback to Flame works great. It's one of those classic kind of shonen flashbacks, and I usually find those really annoying. But the way it's used in this is clever, because not only does it show you stuff about the character in terms of how Frieren approaches demons and how she's inherited that approach from Flame, but also Aura's hubris, that kind of demonic confidence in her own magic. The way that's exploited is just really satisfying. And also the fight between Fern and Stark and Lugna is just fantastic as well. Is it Lugna? What the hell's that demon's name? Yeah, it is Lugna. I was right. It's interesting because I think in general there's this slight discrepancy between the fights in the manga and in the anime, because Madhouse they just go ham on the fights, and they really shove the budget in, and they give those fights a huge amount of motion, a huge amount of excitement. And you can kind of forget that if you go and look at the manga panels, they're kind of just often these kind of 1-2 panel affairs, and the focus of the manga is so not on the fighting that you can forget that this isn't an action manga. And that was partly why I thought that Frieren wasn't going to be this big hit. I thought that in general Frieren was too slow-paced and too character-focused to really become this kind of big international hit. And so it was really fun to see it, the way that Madhouse adapted the material in a way that not only made it more accessible, but heightened the material in some ways. And that's really hard with something that's already a damn good manga, in my opinion. So we'll keep Aura there for the moment. Travels to AUBERST. So this is mostly defined by sign. At first I didn't really appreciate sign. I think I didn't quite see how this character worked in relation to the others. And so at first when I read the manga, I think it didn't surprise me when he left. But this is another thing that I think the anime did a great job of adapting. Sign's introduction is handled really well in the anime. I think they do a good job of drawing out the themes and how Sign's approach to life really mirrors Frieren's approach. Himmel had to come and kind of bring Frieren out of this malaise that she was in, this kind of 1,000-year procrastination period. And I really love the way that Frieren does the same for Sign, and how that shows character development not only for Sign but for Frieren as those chapters continue. I love the craft chapter. The craft chapter is, I think it's rated probably rather than overrated or underrated, but I just think that chapter is excellent and only gets better the more that the series carries on. Yeah, so Travels to AUBERST, how do I rank this arc? I think it's still very strong. One of the very few issues with Frieren is that you can see there's these big kind of high points of tension, these planned arcs, these big set pieces, shonen-esque set pieces that really kind of dominate the narrative for a period of 20 or so chapters, things like the Golden Land arc, things like the First Class Mage exam, things that the author has put an awfully large amount of time and effort into planning. And then you have these kind of in-between sections where they're kind of bridging the gap. And really, I love those bridge sections. You know, I think the reaction to Frieren Season 2 is interesting because a lot of people really didn't like the slower pace. They felt that the series was kind of regressing. It was going back to some of the structures of the first season rather than kicking on and doing its own thing. And I think the reason why that perception existed is because Golden Land was not adapted, right? Because these bridge sections, not only are they building up to the next big arc in these cases, you know, the way that the northern travel arc builds into the Golden Land, and then, for example, Travels to AUBERST then builds into First Class Mage exam, they really need to be seen together for those arcs to really click and to make sense, and for you to realise how the themes are being reflected in each. So I think that this is still a very, very good story arc. I think that I'm probably going to put it in B for the moment, but the thing with tier lists is that your opinion changes as soon as you see the whole thing together, so I'm aware that there's probably going to be some chopping and changing, and also that I still need to think of some funny names for the tiers rather than just S and A and B and C and D. We need more tiers. First Class Mage exam, oh boy. First Class Mage exam. I love this arc. I think First Class Mage exam is great. I think it could be the best Frieren arc. There's two arcs that I would say are the best Frieren arcs thus far, and First Class Mage is definitely one of them. I'm going to put this in here. The manga and the anime, they do such a good job of juggling the characters and getting you actually surprisingly invested in all of them quite quickly. You know, you think of the characters that get introduced in First Class Mage exam, all of them already feel quite kind of iconic as a fan of the series. Not just Ubel, Sensei, Seri, of course. Seri is just such a good character. Seri is probably one of the best characters in the series. The tasks are all really rich. The way that the tasks integrate into the character arcs is just fantastic. I love in particular, the third task, when it's just Seri interviewing the candidates and hoping to find that attitude towards magic, that kind of warlike attitude that she generally appreciates. They challenge her opinion on magic, Frieren in particular. That whole section, the whole conversation between Frieren and Seri, where she asks Frieren what her favourite spell is, and she says, the spell to create a field of flowers. That's probably one of the best scenes in the whole series. I think that scene is just genius. Perfectly captures both Frieren and Seri, and the way that Flame's kind of influence runs through them both is just really moving. Fern's character development continues in a really meaningful way. She affirms her commitment to Frieren and to Frieren's way of life and Frieren's approach of magic by taking the spell to clean clothes. I think that's just the spell for perfect laundry. I mean, what a great spell, by the way. Who wouldn't want that? Anything else I can say about this arc? Denken introduces Denken, and Denken is a highlight of the series. Such a strong character, and obviously we only see the best of Denken later on, right? But this character's great. There's just, God, when you actually think about First Class Mage exam, it just gets better the more that you talk about it. I mean, the way it's structured, the way that the characters all link together, the way that their spells work, the more that you learn about magic, how it works in the story. I think Frieren's soft magic system is underrated, actually, because I personally, I'll be honest, I hate magic systems. As far as I'm concerned, the more simple a magic system, the better. I don't want to have to spend time passing through an annoying power fantasy magic system. I don't want to have to spend time passing through large amounts of lore. Lore is kind of a sweetener to a fantasy story as far as I'm concerned. What should be good, what the author should be focusing on is character. And as soon as they get the characters right, then you can go beyond that and you can come up with a complicated plot. No, the reason why these fantasy classics are fantasy classics, things like Tolkien, things like A Song of Ice and Fire to a certain extent, the characters are the strength of all of those stories. And Frieren is exactly the same. And I think the first class mage exam typifies that, where the real strength comes from the characters, not from the shonen structure that it's using. So definitely an S tier arc for me. Continue Northern Travels. Very fresh on everyone's mind because of the anime, and I've kind of already touched on this and why I think that the reaction to Season 2 has been somewhat polarizing, unfairly, in my opinion. I think this is really good. I think that I'm probably going to put it in B for the time being because I view it in a similar way to Travels to Outburst. One thing that I really noticed and loved about second season, I'd forgotten the way that it really naturally goes into Golden Land. The focus on homeland and protecting your homeland, the focus on coming back to somewhere that you belong, the focus on remaining behind when everything else is saying that you should leave, the dangers around you, demons attacking from all sides, monsters attacking from all sides too. That just builds perfectly into the Golden Land arc, and particularly Denken's arc. I thought that the anime adapted all of those chapters beautifully. Himmel's memoir, I remember thinking that chapter was a little bit underwhelming in the manga. The way they adapt it in the anime is just stunning. The first-person POV of Himmel's memoir and him looking through the memories, just beautiful. I love the way that you see Frieren reading the memoir and then she turns the page and it's just blank. Just a killer moment. Madhouse has hit it out of the park continuously with the adaptation of the manga. So I'll put it in B, even though is it a B? Maybe it's an A. Maybe I think I really like Continued Northern Travels. All the stuff about the Norm Company is great. It's funny. The date is cute. There's just so much fun stuff in this arc. I think I really like it. Maybe it's an A. I'll put it in A for the moment. That might change. But I'll put it in A for the time being. Just I was talking about it and I kind of persuaded myself to put it higher up. Divine Revolt arc. I think this arc is carried by the anime. I'll be honest, this is one of those arcs that I had completely forgot about as a manga first reader. I remember when they said they were kind of making a big deal out of the Divine Revolt arc with the promotional material and stuff. I was like, I'll be honest, I barely remember this. Looking back, it's good, but again, this was something that I'd forgotten about from the manga, and I think the anime, first of all, because the animation was just absurd, the quality was just fantastic, and they kind of assembled the Avengers of the assembled the Japanese animation Avengers to do that episode, which was very entertaining. In hindsight, hello Ganao, your character was much better than I remembered. Meto's relationship with him is really interesting. I love the scene with Seri when it flashes back during the first episode of the big fight, when there's that flashback to Ganao talking with Seri, and you have his friend laid out. And the way that reflects Himmel laid out. And also just in general the way that his attitude has been influenced by his friend, and that capturing the way that Frieren's attitude has been influenced by Himmel. This is something that I love about watching an adaptation of a manga that you love, when you've sometimes forgotten some of the details and you get to re-experience it in anime form. I definitely don't think this is as good as some of the strongest arcs in the story. I think it's very entertaining, fine in the manga, not a highlight, made better by the anime. I wonder if it's even worth having C and D, because I think in general the quality of Frieren is just so high that the chance that I'm going to want to put anything in C is quite low, or that there may be some future ones, but yeah, I'll put it in B for the moment. Golden Land. Oh boy, the Golden Land arc, the one that everyone is waiting for, the one that everyone wishes was in season 2 and yet wasn't. I'm kind of happy that we're not going to have to wait too long. I know a year and a half, almost 2 years feels like an awfully long time now, but I thought it might be longer. I'm happy that we're getting it fairly soon, and that the Frieren anime is keeping up the momentum as much as possible. I know there's still a sizable break, but I'm glad we're getting it fairly soon. I just wish that Golden Land came straight after Northern Travels and Divine Revolt, because it needs to. It makes so much more sense as an organic story to have Golden Land straight after that. But what can you say about Golden Land other than that it is peak fiction. It really is. This was not like Divine Revolt. I remember reading this arc in the manga and being blown away. I loved this arc when I read it. And it's interesting because when I was reading the manga and it wasn't very hyped up, you know, this was just kind of an organic reaction of mine. This was something that I just reacted to as I was reading it. And at that point, it wasn't particularly popular. I wasn't really talking with other Frieren fans. And I remember finishing Golden Land and thinking, wow, that was great. That answered so many of the questions I'd had about demons. Because before that, people forget, the demons just haven't really been explored very much. And then Golden Land comes around and it affirms all of the things that you found kind of creepy and interesting about the demons, while still adding nuance. Both Marked and Solitar, fantastic villains, just great villains. Some of my favorite in a kind of a shonen, in a modern anime manga. I think that Solitar in particular is really the best villain so far. I know people love Marked. I think Marked is great, but Solitar is such a great foil for Frieren. Her whole showdown with Frieren gave me chills when I read it in the manga. I can't wait to see that showdown with Frieren in the anime form. And then there's Denkin. I mean, Denkin's character arc is... oh, it's so good! It's just... mwah! I'm in danger of just descending into hyperbole here because I love Golden Land. There's not a huge amount I can say about Golden Land which people haven't said before because it's just fucking good, man. But yeah, definitely an S tier arc. I think for the best Frieren story arcs, it's between Golden Land and First Class Mage Exam for me. I think these are definitely the two highlights, and I'm gonna have to make more videos on Golden Land. I'm gonna have to make some kind of video essay on it. I think I do have a plan to. I'd love to go deeper into Solitar and Frieren. I think that's something that I'm gonna want to do at some point. Okay, so after the long train of hyperbole for a long train of fanboying for Golden Land arc, we get to Goddess Monument. Now, I have strong suspicions that Goddess Monument is going to be made into a movie. I think that's the right approach because it can be made into one in the sense that it's short enough, and I think that you can compress the material into a movie in a way that will be effective. It might be worth rereading the arc to just double check on that, but I think it can be done as a movie, and I think that would work. I know people love this arc, and there's one, I think it's chapter 117, which is the kind of the really famous section from this arc. Most people will know what I'm talking about. I actually do think that this arc is probably one of the weakest in the story. Before you click off the video and raise your pitchforks, etc., the reason why I thought that this arc was actually kind of underwhelming when I read it in the manga is because it starts so well. This is something that might get missed by people who haven't read the manga. When you're basically, this arc comes out of nowhere. So when I was first reading Frieren, you know, you've just finished Golden Land, it's having a kind of a lull, and then you get this kind of going to find this Goddess Monument, which you think is going to be another Frieren slice of life, little burst of Frieren stuff. And then you turn over, and it's this stunning color panel, and you realize out of nowhere that she's gone back in time, and that she's actually talking to the hero party. It's not a flashback. That is by far my favorite moment of the Frieren manga, because I was reading it without being spoiled. I had no idea it was going to happen, and it just comes out of nowhere, and it was so fucking insane. The way that the color panel works is just great, and I have no idea how they're going to capture that magic in the anime, because I don't think that you can replicate that effect of going from black and white to color in the way that the manga did. Then you have the arc itself. And the reason why I think that the arc is actually underwhelming, which is going to surprise people, is because this didn't tell me anything that I didn't already know about the characters. What do I mean by that? Well, by now we already know that Himmel's in love with Frieren. Already we kind of know what Himmel means to Frieren in return. You know, she might not love him in quite the same way that he loved her, but we know that his impact on her has been so great that it's something tantamount to love, right? As a result, by the time that this arc ended, I kind of felt like we'd just gone back to the place that we started. I didn't feel like I learned anything new about the characters. Having said that, obviously I think this is a fan service heavy arc. I think that's why people love it. Who doesn't want to see the hero party in action against some of the strongest demons in the world? Who doesn't want to see that? Who doesn't want to see Himmel fucking kick ass? Who doesn't want to see Ison battle the demon whose name I've briefly forgotten? Who doesn't want to see Solitar again? Who doesn't want to see Frieren and Himmel at the altar together? I mean, obviously, I can see why people love it. But I do think that it's kind of style over substance. I think that the fan service kind of makes people forget that really we didn't learn too much new about the characters in this arc. Went back, affirmed what we already knew, and then carried on. I felt like this arc had so much potential, man. I felt like we could have really gone deep into the hero party's connection in a way that we hadn't been able to before. I felt like we really could have gone into Frieren and Himmel. We could have just challenged our perceptions of them a bit more. So, stuff to love about it. I do think it's one of the worst Frieren arcs. Just because I think that it starts so well, it had so much potential that ultimately doesn't get fulfilled. In my opinion. I'm willing to hear why I'm wrong in the comments, because I think people will say why they think I'm wrong. I'm conscious that this is the more controversial opinion about Frieren that I have. So I am actually going to put this here. I'm going to say that this is worse. Is it worse than Divine Revolt arc? I don't know. I think what I might do is remove C and D, because I feel like I don't think any of the arcs of Frieren are that bad. But we'll figure it out as we go. At the moment, I'll put it in C just to emphasize that I do think this is one of the worst Frieren sections, but as much as there's a few moments that you'll love, there's stuff I don't like as much about this arc. Imperial Territory Travels, I'm definitely going to say this is C. I'll be honest, when I was just looking at the arcs before I started this video, I did have to just double check what this arc was, because I knew it was just after Frieren, but it's definitely a kind of a transition section. It's you know, I think it's barely 10 chapters long, might even be less, and it's just really, it's one of those kind of transitions where you're going from the one major story arc into the next. And I don't think that the chapters in this are as memorable as the ones in, for example, Travels to Outburst. It's not as memorable as the ones in Continued Northern Travels. There's some fun moments, but really it very much feels like a kind of an in-between section. I like the stuff about the statue, the statue of Himmel that looks completely wrong. That is fun. But for me, it's not as good as the other one, so I'll definitely put that in C. As for Foundation Festival, I can't really rank it yet because it's not finished. My general opinion on Foundation Festival so far, I love the setup with the assassination attempt on Seri. I think that's such a cool hook, and I love that. I love seeing Ubel again. I love seeing Seri again, of course. I love seeing the people from the Continental Magic Association. The Empire, the jury's out on it. I think it looks kind of silly. I think their design is, you know, I get what they're going for with the design, but the fact that they're called Shadow Warriors is kind of cringy in my opinion. I've never been able to get over the fact that why are they called that? It sounds like something from Eminence and Shadow, but you're supposed to take it seriously. So the jury's out on that. I think that they've introduced such a mass of characters that I'm still kind of getting to grips with the characters at the moment. I'm not quite sure where it's going. I'm interested. I'm intrigued. There's stuff I like about it. There's also stuff that I'm not so sure on yet. The jury's out. It's not even over yet. And because obviously Frieren is on an indefinite hiatus, which is never going to not be sad, we're not going to know how this arc ends up being yet. At the moment, I'd say it's projecting somewhere around B or A. I don't strictly know yet, because, again, I've already emphasized that. Unfinished. For that. You know what? Let's just change some names. I think this is going to be called The Golden Land, just to emphasize that this is the peak sections. Kill yourself.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
Okay, so this is kind of how I view the Frieren story arcs at the moment. Is that right? Oh, I'm doubting myself even as I speak. Maybe it's this? Maybe it's this instead? Travels to Outburst is good. I like Sign a lot. Maybe it's that. I think that's better, actually. I'm going to say, yeah, so start again. Golden Land tier, Golden Land, Beyond Journey's End, First Class Mage Exam. A tier, Arrow of the Guillotine, Travels to Outburst. Auberst. I'm probably saying that wrong. God, my German pronunciation is probably so poor in this video. B tier, Divine Revolte, Continued Northern Travels. C tier, Goddess Monument, Imperial Territory Travels. Unfinished, Foundation Festival. Okay, that is my loose, unscripted, very instinctive tier list so far of the story arcs in Frieren. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me what you thought in the comment sections. Tell me what your favourite Frieren story arc is. Tell me what your favourite chapter is even. Go on, go ham, just tell me what you think about Frieren. Thanks for watching.